What if we put all these sick elderly people on diets like this? It probably will help a lot of their conditions. That's basically what started my journey. In our modern medical system is you need to integrate more salads and fruits into your diet. And I guess that's better than a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but that's not where the problem is. If she sees that the patient is protein malnourished, and there's actually a diagnosis that we include in, say, the admission paperwork, she'll recommend, oh, you need to eat more peanut butter, or you need to eat more soy, because again, meat is the enemy. The system is just going to collapse on its own. People are going to be fed up by going to the physicians and not getting answers. They're going to start seeing that people online are benefiting from changing their diet, that there are now doctors that talk to you about this stuff, and that movement is going to grow.
Welcome. We have Dr. Ahmad Ammous with us today. He is a internal medicine specialist working as a hospitalist in Boston. And I suspect, I'm just going to guess while I'm in there, that you are in favor of meat, perhaps, and probably are interested in Bitcoin. You live in Boston, because I'm guessing, but I may not be with me. Anyway, if you don't mind, just share your background with us for those that don't know you. I'll be with you.
Hi, Shawn. Thank you so much for having me. So yes, I'm an internal medicine physician. When I was in medical school, I made some changes in my diet, which involved eating a lot more meat than I used to, and it made me feel so much better. And it was at the same time when I started getting exposed to patients with all sorts of chronic conditions, and I was just very disappointed with how the medical system was unable to help these patients. They were doing everything that was recommended to them, but they still weren't getting better. And so I started looking for more answers, and that's how I understood the healing power of diet. And I've been trying to teach people about that ever since.
And were you influenced by your brother? I know he's been at Carnivore even longer than I have. He's probably close to 10 years on this now. So was Safe Meat an influence on you in that decision, or something else?
Yes, definitely. Been experimenting with low carb and carnivore diets. We started around the same time. And
okay. So you got closer to that as well, I would assume. And this is one of the things, you guys as a hospitalist, and you're so limited on, I don't know, maybe you can. Are you able to influence the diet of these inpatients? Because obviously they're in there for some acute exacerbation of chronic disease, or sometimes it's something truly acute. But how does that work in a hospital?
Unfortunately, I am tied to my hospital job for now because I require it for visa reasons for now. I'm hoping to get out of it soon. But I have to practice the medicine that they teach us. I unfortunately can't practice my own way for now. But I hope to eventually be able to do that. It's difficult to do that in the hospital, but I'm aspiring to be able to do that eventually.
Yeah, when I remember, when I had patients in the hospital, they were all orthopedic patients. It was total knee replacement, from surgery or trauma patients to occasionally you get an infection or something like that. That was all acute stuff, but probably what, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably see a lot of diabetic complications. You might see a lot of pulmonary respiratory things, acute renal things as a hospitalist. How much of that do you think that you see is directly attributed to poor diet and lifestyle?
Oh, a very large percentage. And the issue is that nobody is looking into that to truly assess what percentage of that can be fixed. And this is why the system is so frustrating. Is we get them better, we send them home, and they're back in a few weeks because the root cause was never fixed. And as a hospitalist, you're exposed a lot to older patients, and unfortunately, elder care here in the U.S., the types of diet that patients are on is rather sad.
Yeah, and many inpatients, particularly you see people in nursing homes, people in their going into dementia care, and it's all this literally empty carbohydrate for the most part. They're low protein, very low fat in the case. We're all terrified of considered fat, and you see there's sort of states of confusion, cognitive decline, dementia are this rife in that environment. Let me go back to your own personal experience, because I assume you grew up in Lebanon. I assume the diet there is probably somewhat different from the U.S. diet, but I'm sure the processed garbage is taking over all over the world. But how did changing your own diet impact you personally? And then how has that, I guess, obviously changed your thinking?
Yeah, I grew up eating the standard diet, which at that point I believed to be healthy. But once you start to understand diets, you understand that it was full of processed foods and full of carbohydrates. During medical school, my brother wanted to first the paleo diet, then low carb and keto, carnivore. And once I went on paleo, I remember I just felt like a different human being. My levels of energy, my mental focus, my exercise tolerance, all these things just improved significantly. And I'll always say that I had some issues with anxiety or depression, and those completely resolved once I was on the diet, feeling great all the time. And that got me asked wondering, so I feel fine. I used to think I feel fine, and now I feel so much better. What if we put all these sick, elderly people on diets like this? It probably will have a lot of their conditions. And that's basically what started my journey.
Yeah, I don't know if you, I don't know if you follow some of the stuff I did, but I was interesting. I've interviewed a guy out in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, who runs nursing homes, and he has adopted a carnivore that's practicing as nursing in addition to exercise and some other things. And he's seeing this tremendous turnout where a lot of people are, for obesity reasons. You get these people that are monstrously overweight, stuck in the nursing home, someone else can care for them, and they lose lots of ways. But people with cognitive issues, dementia patients, which are recovering, becoming more independent, had something to be able to send back home with basically the resolution of a lot of their issues. It's pretty interesting to see when you do that, how many people. And the question is, I guess the question always is, how many people would that benefit? Because I've seen thousands and thousands of people healing all kinds of various ailments, and we're going to publish a case series on inflammatory bowel disease within the next couple of weeks. And so the question then becomes, how many people is it effective for? 10%, 50%, 90%? We don't know that yet. So I think the science needs to do some of that. And it's frustrating when the amount of effort just to get this whole case series published was enormous. And we had IRBs where you refused to review it. We just keep kicking it down the front, and it takes more than months of time to finally go up private IRB and pay extra money to have it. So anyway, in your mind, what are the big problems we see with the people that are the mental hospital with regard to lifestyle and diet and other things that you see over there?
One major problem is the lack of nutrition in their diets. Most of these other people, they don't get such adequate care at home, and they don't have the resources or the expertise or even the knowledge to put in that much effort to prepare. So, I mean, I really don't have a hot meal the entire day. They have cereal in the morning, they'll have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at lunch, and then they'll have some sort of processed snack at night. And this is what they eat every day. And so this is just a recipe for disaster, basically. You need protein, you need fat. And then when the system tries to instruct them about eating healthy in our modern medical system, is you need to integrate more salads and fruits into your diet. And I guess that's better than a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but that's how the problem is. And
what I was going to say is that it's not very rich in, I know we hear about the meal, it's phytonutrients, but it's not rich in real, I think, nutrition that we actually need in many ways. How do you assess, can you assess reliably patients' nutritional status in the hospital, albumin levels and things like that? Or is there a battery of tests you can run to say this person is malnourished or lacking in this and that? Is that done when you admit patients, or is it just address the problem at hand and all of some of that?
They still use BMI, and BMI is not completely accurate because some people could have low BMI or good BMI and still be malnourished. Albumin is a fact one that you can use, but it's also not completely accurate. Most people, you can just tell by their muscle mass just by looking at it that these are malnourished. You can also just tell from their skin and how pale they are that they're not eating well, they're not exercising at all, they're not being outside. And so it's not very difficult.
Yeah, I can remember with like skin. I can remember patients, particularly older patients, where you barely just touch their skin, and rips. I mean, it's so frail. You have to be, you can barely move these bases without the skin of it. That whether it's decaying in that regard. Are there any options if you, like when you have a patient go to the hospital and you have to write, I assume if you have them, you write a diet order. That's part of the admission process. Do you have any leeway to say, hey, give this person more protein, or how do you deal with that, or can you deal with that?
If you put in that, yeah, it should be like an extra protein. They'll leave him like an extra ensure. And ensure is a complete disaster. It's like a liquid nutritional supplement that they give to patients. It's down like a protein shake, and it's all made of soy protein and vegetable seed oil for fat and lots of carbohydrates. So it's a disaster. If you recommend the dietitian see the patient, she's also going to recommend adding an ensure. And so it's not. And then if she sees that the patient is protein malnourished, and there's actually a diagnosis that we include in, say, the admission paperwork, she would recommend, you need to eat more peanut butter, or you need to eat more soy, because again, meat is the enemy.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Gosh. What about, how do you, I assume you're carnivorous from mostly carnivore. How do you get your nourishment at the hospital? I know when I was working, I could get eggs, I could get hamburger patties, things like that. How do you deal with it day to day and bring your own food, not eat at the hospital? I'm sure you're working, several 12-hour shifts a month. I don't know how your system works, but.
Yeah, I bring my food from home. I cook everything, breakfast and lunch for the day. I just bring my eggs and my meat with me. The hospital food for the staff is atrocious as well.
Yeah, the doctor's great for them, and there's usually a bunch of muffins and nagels and all the and that stuff. Are there anybody like where you practice? I don't know if you're in a group setting, or are there any of your colleagues glued into diet, or are they all just kind of corporate medicine, this alien sick type of stuff?
No, nobody even comes close to thinking about these things. The way physicians think about it is, I am exempt from thinking about this stuff. I'm beyond it. I'm more knowledgeable, and I care about more complicated things. I shouldn't be thinking about diet. Diet is not such an important thing to the care of my patients, which is unfortunate because you wouldn't have these patients in the shoes they're in if someone taught them about diet at any point.
Okay, because they can wield complicated drugs and look at labs. But the basics don't matter. I'm 100% of the plate, so hear that. So you said you're doing this for visa purposes. What is the time frame on that? And what if you had your sort of choice of how you would practice? What are you planning on doing?
I think I'm hoping it's only 6 more months and I'll be done with this hospital job. And my hope is to have my own clinic where I can see people, address root cause, whether it's diet, whether it's other lifestyle factors, and hopefully get people off medications. And medicine is like a old school primary care physicians. They used to get to know people. It's not just you see them once and goodbye. And I'm hoping to be able to develop relationships with my patients. I've already started seeing some patients online. I think that's another avenue that you can make a difference because you can get access to patients everywhere. I've already started talking to them about the foreign lifestyle rather than pushing yes.
Yeah, one of our physicians that we have at Revero, our company, Eli Girouge, he was in internal medicine hospice like you, and he basically said, "I'm tired of this crap." I've seen Trickle Asian over in New York also has done something similar. So we see more and more physicians that are like saying, "Look, I'm tired of just the stuff." I know you're captured at the moment due to visa stuff. I think it was a growing significant number of physicians here with the system. What do you think are the biggest sort of problems that you see with either inpatient or the healthcare system in general?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We know that it's pharmaceutically driven, that all the treatments are recommended so that you end up prescribing medication because that's how a pharmaceutical company can make money out of it. But what I think I want to raise more awareness about, and many of the people in the alternative health community are not aware of, is why did we get to that point? Why we get to the point where it's only pharmaceutical medicine that is practiced? And I think it's important to talk about something called the Flaxman Report, which started in the early 1910s. And that was a That was a movement to try and standardize medical education in the US. And what they mean by standardize is basically switch all types of medical schools into medical schools just talking about pharmacology and pharmaceutical treatments. And since we started that, any sort of other schools of medicine that were more health style oriented, they talk about diet, they talk about natural treatments, all of these were shut down. And that's where we get to the point right now where basically the system is captured by pharmaceutical medicine. And it wasn't like people say it's just a free market because people want to make money. No, it was a government intervention, medical education. And that's the reason why most doctors now have no idea how to practice except prescribing medications. So I think that's something important that people need to know about.
Yeah, the flexion report. Prior to that, it was an even distribution of homeopathy, some of the other things. And they are often vilified these days as quackery and chiropractic, even is a lot different than quack. And yet, there is tremendous value, particularly in nutrition. Gosh, and if we would put the resource and rigor into studying how nutrition truly impacts us with the amount of funding that the pharmaceutical companies have, I think we're in a different place, more honestly. And, it's interesting to see. Do you see, I just wonder if you think that the allopathic medical system can be changed from within, or is it just too intertwined with the pharmaceutical companies? My opinion is it probably is too intertwined, but I don't know if you see any. Can you change the system from within, you think?
I don't think so. The way the system stands right now, where the just restrictions in the sort of medicine that medical schools teach, the sort of medicine that you can practice, that's what makes our modern system. And these need to go away before a useful system can come up. And I don't think it's going to happen where people are going to wake up one day and realize, we need to change the system. I think the system is just going to collapse on its own. People are going to be fed up by going to their physicians and not getting answers. They're going to start seeing that people online are benefiting from changing their diet, that there are now doctors that talk to you about this stuff, and that movement is going to grow. And this is going to be the answer to fixing the healthcare system, I think.
The answer is not just put everybody on Ozempic shots, right? I don't know. Do you have experience with that? Is that something that impacts you in any way? I don't know if you see any reports.
I've seen people with bad side effects from it, like very bad constipation, very bad nausea, vomiting. And you don't hear enough about the side effects. Like, you hear a lot about the success stories and all the weight loss.
Yeah, the side effects are always downplayed. This is almost, you can take it to the bank that any pharmaceutical drug will always oversell their benefits and undersell talk about the side effects, which we find out as physicians 5 years in and start saying, yes, all these patients are having these sorts of complications and so on and so forth. And as we see, the thought is we're just going to develop better and better drugs, more technology, more drugs, more testing. And up to this point, I don't think there's a reduction in incidence of any drug, any chronic disease. We have not seen a reduction in any of these. They always continue to get more and more diabetes drugs, more diabetic patients. It's just like when I started in medicine back way back in 1989, the term, at least I'd never heard it, disease management had not existed yet. And then at some point they rolled out this disease management term. What does that mean? But basically, this medicine means keep people medicated the rest of their lives. And that's what we have a system that practices that now. Let's talk about, you said, red meat is the devil, meat is the devil, fat is the devil. What are some of the misconceptions about that? Obviously, people are going to talk about saturated fat and cholesterol or blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so the entire fat hypothesis and the notification of fat, it helped the current system in many ways. And number one, it vilified animal fats and encouraged people to eat processed seed oils. In that sense, all of the oil manufacturers made a lot of money through that. That's one. Number two, by people cutting down their meat consumption, by people cutting down on their protein and fat, naturally, the alternative to that is eating more carbohydrates. All processed, sugary foods, manufacturers benefited. And the third way is, now that you're verifying cholesterol and setting this certain limit on what healthy cholesterol is, you start selling people cholesterol medications or statins. And those were the most successful drugs in history. And so there was a lot of money to be made there. So these three contributors have led us to the situation right now where fat is the enemy. That's because they need so much money. It's selling these three things to us.
How much, when you practice, when you see a patient, I remember when we had these various electronic medical record bits, a system called Epic, which is, I don't know if you guys are similar, but it would have basically algorithms. You just follow them. It's like you have a patient admitted for whatever. I don't know what you admit patients for. Acute renal failure, something like that, diabetic. You have a cookbook algorithm that if you don't follow it, you have to justify it like, hey, it's pretty much just, I'm just running an algorithm all the time.
Yeah, that's how medicine has become. It's becoming less and less personalized. They just want us to follow algorithms, and these algorithms are basically medications and more medications. And start this medication, stop this medication, wait for a couple of days, and send the patient home. That's basically the way it works. And any sort of nuance is discouraged, and any sort of nuance is seen as a waste of time, and it's not helping the patient in that way. I'm actually trying, as much as I can, try and prescribe medications for patients. Especially, I'm not a big fan of statins or cholesterol medication for elderly people, so I've stopped it in a lot of people, and I've seen such improvements in their cognition and in their strength and in all of just how well they feel in that fucking. And
do you see that acutely, like while they're inpatient, or do you see it with subsequent visit? How does that work? And you see somebody's admitted to the hospital for 2 weeks, and you say, "Let's take you off this Lipitor," or something like that. Are you seeing those benefits at that acute level?
So this is a trick that I do, and I don't put it out there publicly. But that's what I do is, whenever I have someone who's elderly, I just stop their cholesterol medication on the day they're admitted. And as I'm sure you've seen this before, that a lot of these older patients, when they come in, they have this thing called delirium, where they get acutely confused at night when they're in the hospital. I never have to worry about that if you stop this data, because their cognition just immediately improves. You are finally giving their brains the fast that they need. And so I don't have to worry about that. I've had a lot of cases of family members coming to me and telling me, "Oh, our dad was okay until a few weeks ago where this stock was started down this cholesterol medication." I just stop it, and within a day or two, cognition starts to improve. And the improvement is that quick.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was a pilot study done where they did this statin removal and then re-challenge study. And all the patients that had cognitive issues got better when they took the statins away, and they got worse when they added it back on. But I'd never seen the follow-on study. I don't know if they never did a follow-on study. I'm not aware of it if they did. Which you wonder, and if you look at the data, at least in my view of the literature on elderly patients and cholesterol levels, doesn't seem that it's a net benefit, certainly with all-cause mortality, to keep these people suppressed with their cholesterol numbers.
Yeah, higher LDL was associated with longevity. So what are we doing by lowering people's cholesterol and causing them to be confused and causing them to be demented, doing them harm? It's just one of the most problematic aspects of medicine is this fascination with cholesterol level and with statins. And you have this 85-year-old where they check their lipid profile and their lipids are elevated and they want to put her on a statin. Well, have you looked at the data? Have you looked at the studies? The benefits of statins are usually, if any, the studies show are 10 to 20 years later. Why are you doing that to the patients?
Yeah, but so it sounds like you see a lot of mostly geriatric patients. Is that your majority?
Yeah, I do see most of the younger patients tend to be very obese, and that's another aspect that I deal with. Lots of diabetics as well.
Okay, yeah. And I don't know how long you've been in practice, but are you seeing an increase in the prevalence of any particular conditions now these days?
I've been in practice for 3 years, so probably not. But what I'm noticing is month by month, the system is just getting more and more complicated and more congested. So the way it is here in Massachusetts, near the Boston area, all these hospitals are usually at 100 or 120% capacity. There are people in the hallways all the time. People wait and really soon for days before they get up to their room even. And there's a lot of, the mainstream has a lot of theories about why this is the case. In my opinion, the most important contributor is that people are coming to us, we're not addressing those costs. So they will keep coming back.
How often are you able to, obviously you have discussions with your patients, check on phone, well on daily and stuff like that. How often are you able to address some of these issues with them? Just feel those to a conversation. Say, hey, look, a lot of these issues would go away if you did X, Y, and Z with your diet bar and stuff.
Unfortunately, not often. And it's because I don't really have the time for that. But more importantly is people go to the hospital and they're not expecting anyone to talk to them about this stuff. They go there, they just want to be passive and be taken care of, and then they go home and they get back to where they were. They don't expect any conversation about anything that they do. They don't expect any effort on their part. So I feel that it's very difficult for me on my own to try and change that. And I think the best way to approach this problem is to start self-selecting your patients, the ones that are willing and want to hear about these things. I think there's enough people out there that want to do that.
Yeah, that's one of the frustrations I had when I was practicing orthopedics, when I started to realize that nutrition was so important in the mitigation, the prevention, the improvement of disease. And I had no resources. And I literally had no resources at my disposal. To prescribe drug and get procedure, I had all the resources in the world. But then when it came to, hey, let's fix your diet and lifestyle, there's really nothing there. Some of the dietitians expect you the same old, really crap, we eat old grains of food and, well, it just doesn't work. I mean, for most people, you start to be so bad. So are you someone that also is a proponent of Bitcoin? Is that something you're a proponent of as well?
Yes, I'm a big proponent of Bitcoin. My brother wrote a book about Bitcoin, the Bitcoin Standard, which got pretty popular. So we've talked about these things a lot. Like at the time when my brother was having his revelation about Bitcoin, I was having my revelation about understanding the medical system, understanding how the importance of lifestyle and why it's not factored into our medical system. I think it's useful to understand our current economic system to be able to understand why we are in the predicament we are in the healthcare system. And again, it's going back to the Flagstone report. It's going back to our curtailment of medical education and our standardization of this process and how it was all just made for the benefit of pharmaceutical companies. And you start to understand that is only possible if we live under a money standard that is not controlled by the free market. When we live under a money standard that is controlled by a central agency that gets to dictate the amount of money it's circulation, which is where we live right now. We have a very powerful government that can print money when they please, as much as they please. And this government gets to dictate what sort of healthcare people need to get, what sort of dietary advice people need to get. And so when there's a central agency dictating that central agency is a lot easier to be under control of certain factors, such as the pharmaceutical industry. And currently our dollar-based system is doing that. They have the ability to print money out of nowhere, and that leads to government being disproportionately large and powerful. And this is hopefully something, if we get people to be into Bitcoin more and more, the power of the system will start to go down, and whatever the market forces dictate, whatever's helping people will become popular and will prosper rather than what's dictated by a government.
Yeah. I went to the Bitcoin conference in Nashville 2 weeks ago. And that's interesting. It seems like a lot of people that adopt that monetary philosophy or that understand money, I guess, out the concept of money, also seem to have alternative views on diet like I do. And some of this is about people more aligned with that too. There's just kind of a probably different beliefs about politics and things like that. What about far as, let's talk about just protein in general? Are people getting enough protein in your view? These old people, is that a significant problem with them?
Yes, if you talk to them, most of them don't have a single animal-based protein during the day, period. And if they do, red meat is notified, so it tends to be either chicken or fish, which is fine, but so they go through the entire month without having red meat. And if they do, they see it as like a cheat day, if they have a steak. And that's a big problem.
What are the problems you eat because of that? What are the political consequences about eating enough protein or red meat in your experience?
I think this starts with people when they're young, and it tends to get worse when they're older. But if you're not having filling meals, if you're not having a good breakfast, a good lunch, or a good dinner, you tend to, if you're not having the protein that makes you full, you tend to always be hungry, and you're in chase of the next sugar high because you're not getting what your body wants. And it's where all this diabetes starts from. And then also the lack of protein in an older patient is what leads to sarcopenia or low muscle mass. And this is a recipe for shorter lifespan, more risk of falls, more risk of fractures, and it also leads to osteoporosis or low density. So these are all these problems that we see. And yeah, they're malnourished, and you could probably get away with it when you're 50 being malnourished, but when you're 80, it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah, and so as you mentioned, the protein augmentation is often done for healing patients. Are things like these insured drinks, which are, as you mentioned, they're just disaster foods. Soybean oil and soy protein often, things like that, which clearly aren't helpful. So you mentioned the replacement of animal fats with vegetables, which clearly occur. And look at the stats from going back, and at least in the U.S., going back from the early 1900s to now, the reduction has been tremendous, and it's been replaced. And even, I think we now consume something like 700 calories a day per person on these various oils, which is something like a quarter of our calories are coming from soybean oil or some sort of vegetable oil. What do you think the consequence of that is? Are they, I don't know if you have an expertise or anything inside this, but a lot of people will say they're good. They lower LDL cholesterol. There's RCTs that seem to show some sort of benefit. There are other people that feel that they are among the most toxic foods that we can consume. What do you think about that? Or do you think there's evidence that shows one way or the other?
Yeah, the lean hypothesis, lean the cholesterol myth. The studies that link high cholesterol with adverse cardiovascular events are not very convincing. The ACID study, the 700 study, is not very convincing. A couple of studies that do point to some sort of benefits are not a large scale studies, but they tend to be mocked up by cholesterol statin manufacturers and by also processed food manufacturers. So I don't believe in the benefits of, I believe in the benefits of importance. I believe in the importance of animal fat for our diet. Again, most physicians these days, they're not looking at the data. They just look at what the guidelines say. I'm sure you've read what you know about what up to date. Up to date is like a medical website that just gives you basically bullet points of what you need to do. And they don't question where do these bullet points come from. But for me personally, my major driver is my health. I've tried being on low fat. I've tried being on seed oil instead of animal fat. I don't feel well on it. I feel hungry all the time. I lack mental clarity. I lack energy. And that's the main driver. And I've seen it with people who are told to increase the fat in their diet, and I've seen the benefit that they get out of it. And
How much of an impact does pharmaceutical industry have on your day-to-day practice? Are you seeing like grand rounds sponsored by them? Are you seeing the various drug reps coming into the hospital and infiltrating the practice? And how do you see it on the day-to-day? I know there's been some crackdown on that, but it's not really been all that's in the
yeah. The way I like to think about it is the pharmaceutical company is not actually interacting with the physician. It's the physician is not directly benefiting from the pharmaceutical company. The issue is a lot bigger than that. The issue is that the people writing the guidelines are benefiting from pharmaceutical companies, are getting benefits from that. And I mean, if you look at the American College of Cardiology, you look at their sponsors, it says it up there, we are sponsored by X and Y drug company. Same for the American Endocrine Society. And these are the people that write the guidelines, and you as a physician are supposed to follow the guidelines, because if you don't follow the guidelines, you're legally liable, your license is liable to be revoked if you don't. And this is how the system is captured. It's on a much larger scale than physicians directly benefiting.
Yeah, we saw some of that certainly with this sort of recent COVID pandemic, where physicians were threatened with their license if they didn't just follow along a certain procedure. There was literally zero room for anyone to practice independently in the way. Where I guess you were probably maybe finishing a residency at that point. Is that where you were at in that situation, maybe?
I was a residency, and yeah, it was very the stuff that we saw, and also very difficult that nobody is allowed to think outside the main narrative that was being told at that time.
I think the silver lining of that event, in my view, is a lot of people have come to question a lot of these authorities, whether it's the CDC, the FDA, various hospital systems, there's multiple organizations, because of this massive suppression of independent thought, the censorship that occurred. And a lot of it turned out to be shown that a lot of things they were saying were actually wrong. And so then if they're wrong about that, what else are they wrong about? Are they wrong about a lot of nutrition stuff? Are they wrong about... One of the things that frustrates me is most of the studies that are produced and paid for by these pharmaceutical companies, they don't share their data. They don't have open source data. They hide it. It's proprietary. No one even know what they actually found. They give a summary of what they say they saw, and you have to take the word for it. And yet they have a financial conflict of interest that runs into sometimes hundreds of billions of dollars. So you're like, how accurate might that be? Let's just say they made you the Surgeon General of the narrative or something like that, or you had some unlimited power to correct the overall system. Where would you start? I'm not that anyone's ever going to make me the Surgeon General or any of that stuff. I think you definitely captured to do that, but what would you do?
I think the main issue is just trying to limit the regulations out there. Leave medicine to the free market. The free market works in all other social industries. It will work in medicine as well. The point being is a physician can go and practice whichever type of medicine he wants or she wants. If the patient is not happy with that level of care, they just have to go to another physician. That's it. No physician out there is going to go and try an harm people intention, because if you do that, people will stop anything. So those are the rules of the free market, which don't exist here anymore. There's a lot of limitations on who can get to practice, a lot of limitations on who can get to medical school, a lot of limitations on what kind of material can be taught in medical school, and a lot of limitations on how you can practice your medicine. Once you get rid of these limitations, a clinician will start writing dietary changes, and people will start talking to them over. And then other physicians are like, oh wow, this seems to be working for people. And other physicians will be interested in that more. And this is how you'd be able to get out of the system we're in right now.
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing with our company along there, we're going to publish our data. We're going to share our results and how it falls. If we are significantly better than standard of care, then hopefully the market will reward that. And I think that's reasonable. Now, if you say, hey, look, I just wonder, because as the way most physicians are conventionally trained, if you say, hey, look, if you start practicing a more lifestyle medicine approach with proper nutrition and some of the other things that go into lifestyle, and you get far better results than I can handing out in immunosuppressive drugs or something like that, per se. There are things like, it's immune diseases. Do the physicians, because they lose potentially some of their income in a way. And it's not that you're making money directly off of utilizing these drugs. Although some physicians are paid spokesmen, and they get paid speaking honorarium of many, many thousands of dollars, and they do that. And I see that some of the, for instance, correct me if I'm wrong, but is your salary in somewhat paid secondary to compliance levels? Like, if a certain percentage of my patients that have this issue are treated with this drug, does it impact you in a way in that regard?
My practice doesn't do that, but some practices do, yes. Following the guidelines.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that where you would get 5%, 10% bonus if you got 90% of your patients with this condition treated with this particular medication or something like that. And there is some sort of level of direct compensation, or at least in some practices. What, as far as you said, you've been able to do a little bit of online stuff, what are the things you think are most easily addressed by nutrition?
I think all the autoimmune issues tend to be due to irritating foods that are irritating your immune system. So stopping all the processed foods and the not so helpful plants that are causing these issues, you start to see an improvement in the autoimmune issues quite quickly, actually. As you said, inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, even osteoarthritis. Those are some of the first issues that we see improve with diet. Other sorts of illnesses, maybe they take a little bit longer. But the way to think about it is, if you're improving someone's lifestyle, you are getting extra benefits on the side. When you're prescribing drugs, you're getting extra side effects on the side. That's the way to think about it.
Well, yeah, elderly people will see a lot of issues with bowel obstructions and diverticulitis and things like that. How often is one of the things that I'm sure as a hospitalist you often refer to, you consult very specialists, whether it's GI, it's nephrology, things like that, depending on the complexity of the patient. Do you find that any of these specialists, particularly GI specialists, I'm amazed that many of them, in fact, probably most of them, I would say that has nothing to do with these particular GI issues. So it's inflammatory bowel disease, which is, in my view, clearly does. But do you see that? Do you have any particular frustration with any particular specialist? And obviously, in a hospital, there's a lot of drugs being utilized. But my understanding is cardiology, as a general practice, prescribes more medications than any other specialty. I mean, they have the highest utilization of drugs overall, whereas some of these other pulmonologists will use a lot and so on and so forth. Which specialties do you find are the most challenging, at least in your mind, with your background, to deal with and say?
Yeah, gastroenterology is quite incredible. Like, you handle the gastrointestinal tract, you handle the system that is meant to handle food, and they have no idea how diet works. They have people come to them with irritable bowel syndrome, which is obviously due to diet, and all they could recommend is just medication and medication. And then people with more serious inflammatory bowel disease, which I'm sure you've had a lot of success stories about how eliminating certain foods can help it, and they absolutely never mention it, and they just keep pushing more and more toxic medications on people. So gastroenterology is quite a challenging field, and in my practice, I refer to people. I have gastroenterology consultant service, and some patients actually want to know, so what should I be eating for my diverticulitis? What should I be eating for my inflammatory bowel disease? And the gastroenterologist doesn't know, so they end up asking me, which is good because I know a thing or two about diet, but the specialist doesn't know. Cardiology are still very fixated on the lipid hypothesis, so they're really into just checking people's lipids and upping their statins, and I also find very frustrating because I really don't need to up a statin on an 85-year-old.
Yeah, just on it from a legal standpoint, you're probably obligated to consult certain specialists at a certain level of care, right? Is that pretty much, it was approaching that as an XYZ condition? It's an automatic cardiology, automatic renal consult, or something like that.
Yes. And you have to follow what they say, because then you'll be reliable if he goes.
Yeah. How often, as a hospitalist, are you working a lot of night shifts and stuff? How does because a lot of times it seems like the hospitalist is managing the overall care of the patient. They're admitted to the hospital, so it's constant attack. I used to do that with orthopedics all the time. And the things we didn't really get into that. It wasn't something we cared about, honestly. They mentioned patients fed, and it wasn't something I ever thought of as an admitting physician. I'm embarrassed to say that, but it was just not on my purview. Probably someone kind of get this patient on the team for you. But so are you primarily, are you ever admitting patients just to your service where you don't have a lot of consults on board, or was it always consult heavy?
I do that, yes.
Yeah, so you have a little more leave. I guess some leave. I mean, I realize it's a restrained system and it's tough with your medium patient setting. Let me ask you this. What drove you to pursue internal medicine and going to be a hospitalist, given your background? Seems, I don't know, primary care makes sense to me in many ways because nutrition is so important. If I were to do it again, I don't know that I would want to know orthopedics more than what I know now, because I'm literally seeing all these other issues to get better with that. It's fun to look. It's a lot in school, but what drove you to choose what you did?
I think I have this old school vision of the family doctor who handled everything, have continuity of care with patients, followed them up. I think that's what drove me to internal medicine. I found out that the reality of primary care, especially in the US, is a lot more complicated, a lot more dark than that. That was certainly something to learn. But yeah, the main driver was to be able to look at the patients holistically. And especially it seems to me that the standard physician is trying to subspecialize just so that they don't take the overall picture. Because the overall picture is so complicated and miserable that I just want to focus on their heart, just so I don't have to look at other things. I don't have to think about their lifestyle. I don't have to think about what bothers them from day to day. But
yeah, go ahead, sorry.
If you listen to patients, this is what they want to talk to you about. They want to talk to you about their day. They want to talk to you about the little complaints. And if you want to be a doctor, you should try and listen to that stuff.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, obviously, you probably get in between specialists where the cardiologist wants one thing and the nephrologist is saying, oh, it's going to kill his kidneys, and they fight. And do you have to make that dilemma where like you've got two specialists recommending polar opposite things? Is that
not that often? It's always one-on-one medications, and it's not really something too exciting or too life-changing for a patient.
How many typical geriatric patients see there? How many of them, or how many medications do these people on typically get in the hospital for the maybe 10, 12
I would say usually like 5.
5, yeah. And then of course you're adding on to that in acute setting. I would imagine adding all these other various. We are running out of time here. I think I see you on Twitter or X now. Do you have social media? Do you have any other websites or anything like that where people can maybe reach out and contact you or talk to you?
Yeah, so on Twitter, I'm on Ammous. I also have my website, AmmosMD.com, and happy to hear from people. Just trying to raise awareness to this issue, try to raise awareness to why our system is the way it is. And I'll teach you a little bit about Bitcoin as well.
Awesome. Anyway, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. Say hi to Safety for me when you talk to him next. And this will be up in, I don't know, about 2 weeks or so, something like that. Okay.
Thank you so much, Shawn.